move on to exceptions. So exception is another topic about correctness. What if something's wrong? How should we handle it? So about correctness, so exceptions. Okay, before we introduce the concept of exceptions, let's have a look at one example. You used so this function is asking for a user input by using prompt. So you use the prompt in one of the labs, right? By using the prompt library, we can read user's input, and then this user input should be a number. And with this score function, we get the root of this input in number. So let's have a try it first. 5 point, just a crash. Yes, this is the example. Let's stop this server, it doesn't need to run anymore. And then npm run ts node, and this is in the source folder. It's 5.3 just crash.ts. Okay, who can give me a number? 7? Good. So this is the root of 7. What else? Anyone can give me another? Sorry? 49? Cool, it's 7. Okay, what about other? What about, 19? Good, all worked. So, what about I'm being silly and give it a...
How about exponential 1, like e?
E? Like that?
Yeah.
No.
-1.
Give it...
-1.
-1. Okay, let's have a try. Error input. This is the reason. The reason is because if x is less than 0, we console log an error message and then we exit that one. Because we want to have a rule, like the input for this function scored, it needs to be a positive number. Yep, question?
No.
All good? Yeah, okay, sure. So this is one way of handling error input. Okay. This is also how we have been handling error input so far. We make sure x is valid before we calculate mass.power x of power 0.5. Yep, question.
Is that function already provided in within the TypeScript file or the JavaScript?
This is the TypeScript file.
I mean the function mass.power, is that already in the TypeScript?
So your question is whether mass.power is a JavaScript function or TypeScript function?
Yeah.
Okay, so the answer is that TypeScript is built on JavaScript, and they share the same functions and libraries. The only difference is that TypeScript has tab, but JavaScript doesn't have a tab. And the way we run TypeScript file is we compile a TypeScript file into a JavaScript file and then run that JavaScript file. So all the functions that we can use in JavaScript, we can still use them for TypeScript.
Yeah, except the only difference is that you have to declare whether it's a number or whatever, right? You have to declare...
Yeah, whenever TypeScript cannot infer the type of that variable, we need to declare what type is it.
Got it.
Yep, all good, cool. Okay, so let's go back to this function. So this is one way of handling error inputs. So invalid inputs, we would say, what we define is invalid. However, just another way of handling invalid input is by throwing an error. So you may see there's something new called throw new error, and then something more try and catch. What are they? Okay, so what are they? So this is another way of handling invalid inputs. Before we go into explaining that, so actually we have seen exceptions before, but we didn't know they are exceptions. For example, we give it an invalid. So this is also another invalid inputs actually. So I do not have a file called 5.3 just crash 1. I do not have this file. And when I try to npm run ts node this file, it gives me an error message. And it looks like throw error, and this error is cannot find this module. So this is something that we have already seen before, but we didn't know what are they. So this is actually throwing an exception, like throw error. So this is throw error. But this is like system-defined error, like can throw by JavaScript, throw by Node.js, but we can also throw our own error, like we can define our own error to be thrown. So this is exception. Okay, so let's explain more. So this line is actually where we throw an error. Okay, so let's take a step back and we'll explain this code line by line later. So let's look at some concepts first. Okay, so there are two coding styles, and they are called look before you leap, and the other one is called easier to ask for forgiveness than permissions. So what are they? So easier to ask forgiveness than permission. So the short of that is EAFP. Have you seen EAFP before? No? Yes? So this is one way of handling errors, and this is the convention of handling error in JavaScript. It encourages you to assume everything is correct. So just go ahead and run the code, run the functions, just go ahead. And then if there's something wrong, we cache that. So we try to run everything, like we assume everything works, and then we ask for forgiveness if there's something wrong, like we cache those errors. And it has its pros and cons. The pros is that it can simplify the logic, meaning that in this our function, we do not interrupt too much. Like if there's something wrong and then we throw error message, we do something else, but we simplify. Like we only have something like throw new error, and then we handle the error somewhere else in the code. But it also makes the code a little bit non-structured because we do not have details like what it's doing here before we run the code. So we only cache the errors when the error is identified. So it's hard to reason what code will be executed. And the other way of, the other coding style is called look before you leap. So this is the style like we used in popular language like C. If there's something wrong, we do something else. And if all the conditions has been met, after we have ensured all the input is valid, and then we go ahead and run the function that we want to run. So this is called look before you leap, or LBYL. So unlike EAFP, it encourages you to check that something can be done before you do it. Like with EAFP, the previous method, we assume everything is correct and we just run it. But with LBYL, we make sure everything works and then we run the code. It also has its own pros and cons. Doesn't require exception, like we do not need to write the exceptions, we do not need to throw these errors. And the code is structured and therefore easy to reason about. Like we have if-else statements, so it's easier to reason about what code will be run. But its core logic can be kind of interrupted by the error checks. We have a lot of error checks before the most important code like we want to run here. Okay, so now let's go to exceptions. So now we kind of have a general idea why we want to use exceptions and what is exception. So exception handling is the process of converting a code error message into a user-friendly error message. So still, both ways throw us but both way of coding handling error inputs give us an error message, right? But the way they give us error message is different. Some people just say like exceptions make our code more elegant. Just another way of writing our code. So both is correct. Like we cannot say which one is wrong. Like both ways are correct, but just different way of printing out error message, like giving us error message. And with exceptions, it throws an error and give us an error message like that. Okay, and different language have different conventions for managing unexpected runtime events. Like C use like check every input is valid and then run the code. So that makes the C code safe. But in JavaScript, we normally use exceptions. Okay, so now let's have a look at this code line by line. So let's have a look at this example. Where's our code? Exception 1. Okay, so here is where we throw this error message. So let's have a try, run this code first, and we can start explain this code. So this is npm run ts node. In this source file, this file name is 5.3 exceptions 1.ts. Oops, .ts. Exception. Oh, there's a typo here. 5.3 exception 1.ts. Okay, so let's try to give it an invalid input. So what about -9? Okay, so now you can see that prints out and throw an error. Yep, question? Oh. Why? Okay, so you didn't see the scene when I turned around the camera and with your hands up? No? Oh, that's sad. Yeah, oh, okay. But you can find your hands up in the recording. It was recorded well, and I was monitoring the online stream, and it works well. Thanks for letting me know. By the way, we still have some snacks over there. Okay, let's try to run this code again. And put in an invalid number -9, and here we got an error, like it wrote an error and says error input is a negative number, negative input. So this is how this code runs. Now you can see some keywords. So the first one is throw new error, and others include try and catch. So what is happening here is that if we give it a negative input, it will throw an error. So this is an error object. And the error message is error input less than 0. And the way that this code runs is that it will start with the code block within try. So we'll run the code in try block. Prompt function, please enter a number, and then console log square root passing input. So if there's anything wrong in this try block, if there any error code in this try block, it will trigger the code in this catch block. And console log error, this error object. And it will stop when there's an error code, without running the following on code. Okay, so remembering that when we use exceptions, we want to assume that all the code works. We will assume that everything works. We try to run everything. And then in the meantime, like during the try, if there's any error code, we stop running the code in try, and then we move on to catch and execute whatever in this catch block. So this is the workflow of try and catch. Okay, so what is this error? What is this error message? So, so this is just a string, like we can put whatever we want. So we can put it like instead like invalid input. And when we run this code again, -9, we got invalid input. So this is just a string, like we can put in whatever we want and print out the message that we want. So this is this error. And here, this error, this ERR, like it's an error object, and it has to, it has error.name, and it also has error.message. So let's have a try. Let me, oops, sorry to, so this is the one. So we can try to print out both error.name and error.message, and then you can have a look at what is in this error object. So let's run that again, -9. And here is what has been console logged through this second console log, which is error. Error is the error name. And we also have an error message, which is invalid input. And we separate the error name and the error message with the 2 lines here. Yep. So with console log, you can see what is in this error. We can also only print out the second one without printing out that error object. So you can see this is what is console logged. So this is the error name, and this is the error message. Yep. So there are 2 parts in this error object. Okay. Cool. So this is the syntax struct of try and catch. There are 2 components, like we run the code in catch first, and then if there's no errors, we will ignore the code within the catch block. And that's it. And if there's any error happening during we run the catch block, we'll stop running the rest of the code and then move on to catch. Okay. And the error object has 2 properties, which are name and the message. You may also ask, like, what is throw new error here? So we can throw an error object, but we can also throw just an object, not an error object. For example, we can throw something like what about throw a string? This is a string like that. Okay, so now let's have a try and see what happens. Oops. Oops. So let's run this code again and give it an -9. And what the error that we console logged in catch is this is a string. Okay, so now we only have a message like throwed instead of an error object. So if we throw new error, our error is an error object, including a name and a message. But we can also throw just a string. And then the error will be a string. We can also have, for example, throw 42. For example, this error is of code 42. And then when we try that, the error that's thrown is just 42. We can also throw true or false. True -9. Oops, I forgot to save the file. -9, and then it'll be true. So you can throw like any object. But normally we throw an error object. Okay. Yeah, question?
What if we throw the function sqrt?
Throw the function? How to throw a function?
Just throw sqrt instead of
sqrt?
Yeah.
Do we need this one, the parenthesis? No? That's an interesting question. Function. Oh, we can also throw a function. That's interesting to know. So now we throw a function. Cool. Interesting. Yeah. So this is throw. So this is how throw works. And what is this error object? Okay. Yep. I think we have mentioned everything about this. Okay, so there's something else we can do. Like we can make that more robust. So now with our current code, when there's something wrong, like when we give it an invalid input, it like throw an error here, but that's it. So what about like we wanted like when there's something wrong, it not only throw us an error message, but also asks us to put an invalid input again, so that it can be a loop, like it loops through a loop till you give it an valid input. Okay, so we can also embed this try and catch block in the loop, like this. So while it's not success, we try and catch again and again and again and again until it is a success. So you can put a try and catch within a loop. Yeah. So this is how we use exception. So let's try that. 5.3 exceptions -9 again. Error when inputting, error input, and then try again -8, still error, -7, error. So now let's give it a valid input 6. Okay. The loop. What? Yep. All good. Any question? Good. Yep. Okay. Oh, okay. Another interesting one is we changed the message of this error object. So we changed the error.message, but we know that within this error object there are two properties, like name and message. So we have tried how to change this error message. So what about if we want to change the error name? So how can we change that? So now by default, the error name is error. But we can also change its name. Exceptions rate. Let's change in this file. Okay. So we can define an object like this. So we can define an object like const e, and this is a new error with this error message. Then we can change the name of this error object by e.name and give it error name. So we can also modify the error object's name. And then we throw this error object. Yep. Cool. So the key points here is exceptions carry data. The data are the name of the error object and also the message of this error object. And when exceptions are thrown, normal code execution stops. So for example, in this example, when an error is caught, the rest of the code doesn't run anymore, like return mass.power x. So this the rest of the code doesn't run anymore when there's an error caught. So here's a question. With try and catch, what if there are multiple errors? Have a guess. Like what will happen if there are multiple errors? The answer is that we catch the first error and then terminate the code. The rest of the code won't be executed anymore. So you only catch the first error and that's it. Yep. So let's have a look at an example. Try and catch. Here's the code. So still we ask for input through the proc function. So we first console log and message this course is for stage 5 and above. And then we ask the user to enter their stage before continuing. If they give an invalid input such as A or B or C or D instead of a stage as a number, we throw an error like please enter a valid stage. Otherwise, if the user's input of their stage is less than 5, like lower than stage 5, we throw an error like sorry, please try lower stage course. Otherwise, we console log enjoy this course. So we have multiple errors can be thrown here. So let's try run this code. Try and catch.ts. This course is for stage 5 and above. Please enter your stage before continuing. I give an A. Okay, error, please enter a valid stage. So now let's try, for example, stage S-ray. Sorry, please try a lower stage course. Okay, what about we put in the stage S9? Okay, enjoy the course. So we can have multiple throw new error in our code, and it will catch the first one and terminate the code block in try, and then move on to catch and terminate the code. Another important thing about exception is we can embed exception with jest testing. So with jest testing, remember that jest testing catch error during runtime, right? Like we execute a code and we had the expected output compared with the output, and if there's any we catch the error, the runtime errors. So now we have this function called skirt, and we throw an error. We define a new error within the skirt function, and we export this skirt function. Okay. Okay. So let's have a look at that. So this is our function skirt, and this is our jest test. So the first half of the test is tested with valid basis, like skirt of 4 should be equal to 2, skirt of 2 to be close to 1.41. Okay. So how do we test exceptions? Here's one thing that we need to pay attention is that normally when we use expect, we compare the output of a function to an expected output, right? So this is what we normally do. However, when we use jest testing to test exceptions, we expect this function to throw an error message. So instead of having expect skirt -2 to throw an error message, we want to expect this function to throw an error message. If that makes sense. So if we have skirt -2, it doesn't make sense, right? So because we cannot get a value of skirt -2. Yeah, but what we are expecting is when we call this function and given it an input as -2, we want this function to throw an error message. Yeah, so this is one thing that to know. We have more details. I put a link in our slide, and you can have a look on the jest documentation. So how to use to throw in jest. Otherwise, it's the same with our other jest testing. The only difference to pay attention to is that instead of expecting an output of a function, we expect this function given an invalid input throw an error message. Okay, otherwise, let's run this code before we wrap up. Run jest catch .test. Oops, a typo. Yeah. The way we run the jest testing is also the same as before. Any questions so far? All good? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Otherwise, that's all for today. The 2 lectures on exception and also persistence. So here's the feedback QR code. as before, we always value your feedback. Yep. So any feedback about the lecture, about the course, about our tutorial, your labs, about our projects, so anything, any feedback about this course is welcome through this QR code. If you have any questions, feel free to stay. Otherwise, that's all for today. Thank you. See you on Friday.